everybody. Welcome to the latest episode, I believe the 242nd episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at HawkBlogger, and you can find me right now in my car after a 23-6 Seahawks victory. The rest of the crew is busy with New Year's Day shenanigans, so you've got me, and I'll be happy to hang out with you for a little while, talk about the game. Happy New Year's to everybody. Seahawks start off 2023 undefeated. They're 1-0 in 2023, and there's a lot to like about this football game. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'll try to check out some questions from you all in the chat as much as I can. I'm not driving, so don't worry about that for the moment. Interesting ball game, and we'll talk about a couple things outside the game. But first, implications, which I'm sure you've seen elsewhere. First things first, the Seahawks, with a victory today, have kept their playoff hopes alive. And with the Commanders losing, they were eliminated. So it's really down to the Seahawks and the Packers for that final playoff spot. I believe there's a chance, maybe, I don't know if the Lions are still alive. Feel free to tell me if they are. But what has to happen for the Seahawks to get in is the Seahawks have to beat the Rams at home next week. And then the Lions have to go into Lambeau Field and beat Green Bay in Lambeau Field. So regardless of what happens if the Seahawks don't make it, whether, obviously if the Packers win, they're in. If the Seahawks lose, I don't think I think maybe if the Lions won and the Seahawks lost, maybe the Lions would be in. I'm not totally sure. But in any event, what matters for Seattle fans is a win plus a Packers loss, and the Seahawks would be in the playoffs. Most likely scenario, Seahawks are not going to the playoffs. There's a chance. I think the Packers are maybe 3-point favorites heading into that game next week. Obviously, the Lions played a good game today against a very bad Bears team at home in Detroit. And the Lions have a terrific offense. So who knows? Crazier things have happened. Division games are weird. You never know what's going to happen. Certainly, maybe even the better news of the day, even the Seahawks victory, was, speaking of weird division games, the Broncos very nearly beat the Chiefs, but thank God the Chiefs won. That was huge for Seattle. Russell Wilson gets sacked again, throws a costly interception again, and the Chiefs did just enough to secure a 3-point win at home. What that means is that the Seahawks are guaranteed no lower than a top 5 pick in this draft. Huge, 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 huge. And so, look, if we signed up at the beginning of the season for the Seahawks to win 8 or 9 games, for their draft class to look great, for them to potentially have the offensive rookie of the year or the defensive rookie of the year, or at least come up second place in both if they don't get those awards, and for their quarterback to play Pro Bowl level, and to get a top 5 pick from the Broncos and a top 5 second-round pick from the Broncos, I don't know who wouldn't have signed up for that. So that's, this season has never been about this season. I've said that before. This is about building towards where the Seahawks need to be. And thank goodness the Broncos have given us that top 5 pick. There is a decent chance, because I believe the Colts play the Texans next week. If the Colts can win that game, that would guarantee the Seahawks a top 4 pick. And the Chargers played really well this week. I think it's debatable what it means for that game in the final week of the season. The Chargers play in Denver, and I believe that game will have implications for the Chargers playoff seeding. Who knows whether or not the Chargers are going to care about playoff seeding more than resting guys. Let's hope that they do. If the Chargers beat the Broncos, the Seahawks will have the 3rd pick in the draft next year. Unless for some reason you think the Bears are going to win next week. I don't even know who the Bears are playing, but I mean, I don't know how the Bears are going to beat anybody at this point. And so assume that the Seahawks would have the 3rd pick if the Broncos lose. Chargers are getting stronger. They got Joey Bosa back. They've got Mike Williams playing. They've got Keenan Allen. Like, there's hope there that I mean, if they play their starters, that's a game they should win. So that's a big deal. I do see in the chat here, thank you, a super chat from Michael Mathis. Sorry, it's very small on my phone screen, so I'll do my best to read this. $20. Thank you, Michael. And as everybody knows, our proceeds go to charity. We gave $40,000 to charity this year, $240,000 plus over the course of Hawk Blogger and Real Hawk Talk history. So thank you for the super chat. He says, go get him, Seahawks. This is the time. Nothing else matters. Just win next week. No matter what happens, it's been a fun year. I'm so grateful. It's been a much more fun year than advertised. Amen, Michael. I think really, really well said. I think that how could anyone not have fun watching Kenneth Walker run the ball this year? So, you know, I think that Kenneth Walker now, he finished with like over 130 yards today. I think he has about 930 yards on the season. He went over 1,000 in total yards this game for the season, but he has a chance to break 1,000 yards rushing, become only, I want to say, the 2nd rusher in CX rookie rusher to eclipse 1,000 yards. Kurt Warner was the other. And I'm pretty sure, I'll have to see when I get back, and maybe I'll do my stats later tonight. I'm pretty sure Kenneth Walker moved into 2nd place for among all rookie rushers in Seahawks history. You will likely not guess who was 2nd place before Kenneth Walker. I will let folks do some guesses in chat before I reveal the answer there. Don't look it up. Don't be lame. Just guess. Have some fun. But Kurt Warner was the first, and will remain there. So Kenneth Walker, though, I think has a very good chance of, with this late surge, of potentially getting Offensive Rookie of the Year. He had been kind of the favorite mid-year, and then he had that massive fall off. And then he's gone over 100 yards the last couple of games. He's had some big games, and you know, especially if he goes over 1,000 yards for the season, I think there's a very good chance, especially if he gets another touchdown. He's at 9 rushing touchdowns. If he gets 1,000 yards, 10 rushing touchdowns, I don't think anybody's got a better resume for Offensive Rookie of the Year. Yes, all the people that are guessing Thomas Rawls, you are correct. Thomas Rawls is the 2nd leading rookie rusher, or was. I believe he has in the 800s, somewhere in the 800s. So now you've got K9, Kenneth Walker, going over 900 yards. So I believe he is firmly in 2nd place. So yeah, let's talk about this game for a second, you know, and I'll return to the draft stuff and other things in a second. First, I got to give hats off to Shane Waldron. That is the first person I'm going to talk about. And here's why. The Jets have a formidable defense. It's a good defense. And that is really built around strong defensive tackles and then excellent cornerback play, outside cornerback play. And what Shane Waldron seemed to do today was build a game plan that relied very little on either DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. And that might sound like, okay, what's the big deal? Well, those are like 70%, if not more, of your passing offense over the year. They are your number 1 and number 2 offensive threats. And to build a game plan where you're not going to rely on them, and for that game plan to actually start strong and get a strong lead and be pretty effective throughout, I give him credit. This was a game plan where they built it around the running game and around their tight ends. And so, I mean, DK Metcalf, I don't know if he even got a target until like the 3rd quarter, or like he was not targeted. And you could say it's Sauce Gardner, which I am sure I give Sauce Gardner. He He played great. He was, in tight coverage the whole day. But that hasn't stopped Seattle in the past from going after other corners. They go after Jalen Ramsey. So I think the game plan was to go to the tight ends and to some of the other targets. And they found there were some just schemed gaps for the tight ends. The early pass to Noah Fant comes to mind. I rose up out of my seat on the snap. I was like, he's open. 87 was the way that the jet zone was set up, he splashed right into the gap there. It was the perfect play call. I'm sure the Jets blew a coverage somehow, but still really nicely designed. And the tight ends, I mean, Colby Parkinson had a great game. He caught pretty much everything that came his way. He had a nice touchdown. Noah Fant had a nice game. Kudos to Tyler Mabry. That's a guy I've always had a soft spot for. He's a guy that was an undrafted free agent. The Seahawks brought him on, and he's never quite been able to break into the 53-man roster. But even in his first season, I made note that coaches and players mentioned him. And they mentioned that he was a great blocker and that he's tough. And I think when you've got coaches and players talking about an undrafted free agent and that they've impressed them with their effort and things like that, I always take note of that. And he stuck around practice squad. He's been on it for a couple of years now. He's been grinding. I think he's had a couple games where he's gotten on the active roster, but never really for, meaningful snaps on offense. And so for him to get a touchdown, not only was it cool for him to get that, but you could see his teammates were so excited for him. And I think that was cool. That was cool to see. I was happy to see that moment. The Seahawks, the team, the players need some of those moments. It's been as rough as it's been for us. It has been at least that rough for those guys, throwing their bodies on the line each and every week and just coming up short every time. So that was cool to see. Tight ends were definitely the big part of this game. And then, I think that, Kenneth Walker, even DJ Dallas, both of them had big games. I think there's a big difference between Kenneth Walker and every other running back on this roster. I think he's really, I'm hoping, turned a corner in terms of his approach. There was a change in the second half of the Chiefs game where he was really encouraged to just hit the line and stop bouncing everything outside. I thought that carried into this game where he hit the hole. He hit the line. There are a number of 5-yard runs, 4-yard, 3-yard runs in this game where it wasn't like there was a big hole, but there was a bit of a push by the line. He ran into their backs. They pushed some more and got meaningful yardage. And that's big. Like Rashad Penny used to be like that as a rookie, where he would just dance and move laterally and he could just never hit a hole. And so you just always wanted to see Chris Carson in the game because you knew at least Chris Carson was going to get you 3+ yards because he was going to run in, plant his foot, run into the hole, push hard, get some additional yards after contact. Penny started to learn this later on and became just a much better running back. So my hope is that this is a rookie lesson for K9, the same way Earl Thomas had rookie lessons where he thought he could, make certain plays or cover a certain amount of ground and got burned a few times, learned lessons that carried over for the rest of his career. And he became an all-pro safety as a result. I'm hoping that Kenneth Walker has learned that lesson about not every play can be an improvisation. Not every play can be a bounce. A number of the plays, you just need to take the yards that are given and come back for the next play. So really, really nice to see. Big running game. The Seahawks run for more yards than they passed in this game. Speaking of the passing game, Geno Smith had an interesting game. I think overall, you've got to say it was a good game, clean game. This was the first game of the season that the Seahawks did not turn the ball over. People don't realize it, but the Seahawks have had a problem with turnovers this year. And it was also the first game in a while the Seahawks got turnovers. It's been a little while. So that does not mean that Geno did not have a number of questionable decisions. My buddy who I share season tickets with said, if you remember toward the end of the game, Geno spun out of a sack and tried to swing it quickly to the flat to where he thought his running back was, nearly threw a pick six. It was crazy. And as soon as I saw his arm starting to wind up, I said, no. And my buddy's like, that's the fourth time this game that you've been screaming no before Geno let go of the ball. And it's true. He had a number of passes where the chances of them being intercepted was higher than the chances of them being completed. And so, I think that his judgment, his decision making has not been as good in the last half of the season. There's just no doubt about it. I thought the offensive line play was significantly better today. I thought he had more time today, and yet he still made some questionable decisions. So, I think this was a good game for Geno. This was not a great game for Geno. And I'm happy for him. He was able to beat his former team. I wouldn't say there's a lot of Jets fans, but they're very vocal. I've got family from New York. It's not unusual for people to be obnoxious from that neck of the woods. They're usually good humored and they can take it as much as they give it, but it's still annoying to hear them. But I think it probably felt good for Geno and Pete. Anytime those two can have a win over the Jets, they both have history there. And that was good for him. But yeah, I thought I'll have to go back and look. I thought Stone Forsythe having to start at right tackle. My guess is he had a pretty decent game overall. And I think that's good news. Charles Cross gave up one pretty ugly sack, but otherwise seems pretty solid. And then, let's talk about the defense. Like, as much as we've ragged on this defense, and as much as they deserved it, they gave up 6 points. Now, the Jets' offense is awful and has been pretty awful, but it's also been better when Mike White's been at the quarterback position. So say what you want about the Jets' offense. I'll have to go back and look, but when Mike White's been the starter, I think that they've been a decent offense. And the Seahawks, got 3 turnovers in this game. There is a couple of interceptions. Quandre Diggs gets an interception. Mike Jackson gets an interception. And then you got to talk about Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor ends up with 2.5 sacks. I believe that gives him 8.5 sacks on the season. This was a guy that we hyped up coming into this year saying, like, hey, is this going to be a guy that can be your featured pass rusher? Can he be a double-digit sack guy? And within a few games of the season, he was basically benched because he was so bad against the run. He wasn't doing anything in pass rush. And they were talking about, okay, we can't play him, as a starter numbers because he just wears out. So he's going to be a rotational guy. That didn't change that much. But here's the thing. Darrell Taylor now has 8.5 sacks. He has 4 strip sacks on the year. And that's not terrible. For a guy that's basically become a rotational pass rusher, who's also adjusting to what is a new kind of role in how he's being utilized, that's good news. It's good news. Like, I have plenty of bad things to say about Darrell Taylor. I'm not going to go in on them right now. I'm sure the other guys on the pod probably would if they were here. But here's the thing I look at. Like, LJ Collier, that guy's been a nothing burger on top of a nothing burger on top of a nothing burger. Like, he's a bust. Like, that's a bust. Darrell Taylor's not a bust. He had 7 sacks last year in his first full season. It was his second official year in the NFL because he missed the first season with injury. He now has 8.5 sacks in his second season. We'll see where he ends up. He's got 5.5 sacks in his last 5 games. So he's got an outside chance of getting to that 10 sack number. Like, I would have not guessed that for sure if you asked me 5 weeks ago whether that was going to happen. And he was a problem today for them. He was a problem today. So I think that that's good news. Kudos to him. It was good to have Al Woods back. I think he helped. It looked early on in this game like the Jets, almost every run looked like it was a crease just waiting to go the distance. But, they managed to mostly hold their own. And then from the first quarter on, I think the Seahawks mostly shut down the Jets offense. I mean, again, I don't have all the numbers yet because I just got off the train, but they don't score pretty much the rest of the game. So kudos to the Seahawks defense. I think, let me double check this. If you guys can hold on. Well, I won't do this. If someone wants to look it up, let me know. Last time I checked, the Jets were under 3. If that's true, if they finished that way, that would be the second game in a row that the Seahawks have held a team under 300 yards. The last one was the Chiefs, which is pretty good. So, that doesn't mean I think the Seahawks defense is good all of a sudden. It doesn't mean I think the Seahawks defense has been unfairly characterized. I think that they are not good. I think the talent level is not good. I think that they could easily use like 8 or 9 new starters next year, and like a number of positions could be upgraded. But credit to the team, they played better. Maybe credit to the coaches, they've coached a little bit better, and they did it with Jordan Brooks going out for what looked like a pretty serious injury. I've not heard yet. I'm sure Pete's going to have it on his press conference any minute, but they ruled him out immediately. I'm assuming it is a serious knee injury. And, oh, by the way, I just saw 279 yards. Thank you, pre-fight donut. 279 yards for the Jets. So they did hold another team under 300 yards. Anyway, I'm assuming that Jordan Brooks has a serious knee injury. I don't want to speculate on what it is, but assuming it's a serious knee injury, then having it in the second to last game of the season, you got to be worried about his availability for next year. Just the way the timing works out. John Radigan's a good example. This is a guy that got hurt late last year and basically became available in the last quarter of this season. He had an ACL injury, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe it was patella. I can't remember. But that's too bad. We'll see. And I see that it sounds like Phil Haynes also had a legit ankle injury, according to Pete Carroll. Thank you, David. Longtime follower. Appreciate seeing you on here. So bad news for Jordan Brooks. I guess you're going to call it good news was that Tanner Muse played pretty well in reserve. So I think that is good news. And I'm not going to be sitting here telling you I think Tanner Muse should be in the plans for being a starter next year. I think the Seahawks I think their inside linebackers are probably one of the worst parts of this team right now. And unfortunately, it's not a super strong linebacker draft, but I think if Jordan Brooks is indeed out for a while, I think you're looking at inside linebacker becoming a higher priority. How high, I don't know, but it becomes a more certain priority for the Seahawks. I will give Cody Barton credit as a longtime detractor for Cody Barton. I thought that he made more plays at the line or behind the line than he normally does. So give him credit for that. And I didn't see any glaring blown plays by Cody Barton, which is great. And speaking of not many glaring blown plays, I saw, folks, you'll never believe this, but I saw it. Quandre Diggs made a tackle in the open field. Now, it was 20 yards downfield, but that's his job. He's a safety. And he has almost every time I've seen that this year, he has blown that tackle. So good for him. We saw a couple other guys make some plays in this game that you wouldn't normally hear about. John Abram got a start, former Raiders first-round pick that was cut this year, went to the Green Bay, was waived by them, picked up by Seattle. He was in coverage when Quandre made his pick. Questionable whether it was pass interference on Abram, but still, no call. I think Abram had another decent play. I can't remember off the top of my head. And then I want to call it Xavier Howard. I might have the name wrong. I might be thinking of the Dolphins' name. But anyway, Crawford, maybe? Xavier Crawford. Anyway, in any event, he, I think, got a hand on a punt. And if not, he absolutely impacted a punt. That was a great play. So kudos to that guy. And let's see. Who else am I missing? I think that's pretty much it, you know? So I would say game balls definitely go to Shane Waldron. You got to probably give one to Clint Hurt, given the way the Seahawks defense has played versus how they played today. And then I loved what I saw from the tight ends, from the running back. And yeah, I think Cody Barton played pretty well today, but Darrell Taylor for me on defense would be the game ball recipient. So, and Mike Jackson, made a play, so that was great to see. So, solid game. Now we've got to hope for the Chargers to win next week. That's the most important thing for the Seahawks. And look, if the Seahawks don't make the playoffs, your consolation prize is probably going to be a draft pick between 15 and 17. I think that there's some people that would say the worst case scenario is the Seahawks winning these two games and not making the playoffs. I don't know if I agree. I think that winning is always good. And I will admit during the game, I was thinking exactly that. I was like, man, they're going to win these two games and they're going to get a way worse draft pick and they're not going to make the playoffs. And that sucks. And it does. It sucks. But I would just much rather have a Seahawks team that is playing well, that, for example, today, that you're having a young player like Darrell Taylor show up. They're having a young player like Kenneth Walker show up. I would much rather have those games to build on, even if it costs you 5 spots in the draft, at least at where we're talking in the draft. If you were going from 3 to 10, I would feel differently, but 10 to maybe this will end up being 10 to 17 could have been the swing if they lost both of the games. But I'm okay with that. And so I'm happy that the team's winning, and let's see. Let's just hope 2023 is a better year for where the Seahawks are going than 2022 was ultimately. But even 2022 was a pretty good year. The team is better off now by a significant margin than it was when it exited last year. Significant margin. So let's get as many of these guys healthy into the offseason so they can, especially the young guys, so they can have the offseason to improve and build upon this year. And then who knows? We'll add this rookie class from next year on top of this one, and maybe some good things will start. So I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. I am going to end the post-game show there. Always appreciate you guys tuning in. If you haven't already, please give the show a like. Obviously, didn't have to do the show. No one else is around, and my family's waiting for me at home, but I appreciate you took a second to give it a like. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then go to patreon.com/hawkblogger. I am not kidding that is the best place for Seahawks talk right now. You get immediate access to the Slack channel once you've gone to patreon.com/hawkblogger. Hundreds of Seahawks fans there. I think the conversation there is way, way, way better than Twitter. A lot of good information. Everybody immediately is breaking down implications to playoffs, implications to draft picks. Everybody's kind and friendly, and if they're not, they get booted. It's not like Twitter that way. So it's a good place to be with good folks, good Seahawks fans, and we talk about other Seattle sports stuff. So do yourself a favor, get involved there. Well, it's going to be, a great place to be involved in all the draft talk all off season. So patreon.com/hawkblogger, head over there now, and we will see you over there. A lot of the Real Hawk Talk crew has kind of left Twitter and is spending most of their time on the Real Hawk Talk Slack channel. So definitely advise that you get over there for all the best that we have to offer. So with all that in our past, I will just say Happy New Year to all of you. Thanks for tuning in. Really wish you the best, and go Hawks.